How evil does one have to be to forfeit not only their right to live freely in society, but also their life? The following convicts were sentenced to the death penalty for their gruesome crimes. In August 2020, the tranquil peace of Melrose, Florida was shattered by a heinous crime that would shock the community to its core. Mark Wilson, living with 14-year-old Tatiana, 12-year-old Robert Baker, their aunt Sarah Baker, and his daughter on a family property, committed a brutal act that left the boys dead. Wilson, who at the time was living in a shed on the boys' Melrose property with his wife, the boys' aunt, struck the boys in the head with a hammer before slicing their throats. Although their mother, Sarah Baker, was asleep in the house at the time of the murders, a homicide detective testified that insulation prevented her from hearing what was happening in the living room from her bedroom. As investigators descended upon the scene, the full horror of the crime began to emerge. Mark Wilson emerged as the prime suspect. During courtroom testimony, Assistant State Attorney Jennifer Dunton recounted the harrowing details of the crime, painting a picture of merciless violence inflicted upon innocent children. During the trial, Baker testified that before the murders, she had seen Wilson outside, sharpening a knife that would subsequently be identified as the murder weapon. An 18-foot blood trail led her to the body of the eldest son. The boys' injuries were initially hidden by the blankets covering them both. The brutality of the murders was incomprehensible, with Robert nearly decapitated and Tatiana bearing multiple throat slashes. Wilson's mother, Chrissy Atkins, played a pivotal role in the investigation, bravely stepping forward as a confidential informant and recording the conversation that sealed her son's fate.
Says, "Mom, I can't do that." And I said, "Why, Mark? Did you hurt those babies?" Mark's left arm went straight down. His head went sideways, and in a voice that was not his own, he says, "Yes, Mom, I did it."
She testified.
The recording was played in court, and Chrissy can be heard begging Wilson for answers.
"I need an answer. I need to know why. Why did this happen? You are my child. You are my son."
In a more shocking part of her testimony, Wilson's mother also revealed that the boys had not been the only targets of the crime.
Did he tell you about a plan between him and...
He was supposed to do the two boys, and said he was supposed to do Sarah and the little.
In an earlier interview with investigators, Wilson had given conflicting accounts of the murders.
Was it really? Oh, that's really fun. I watched you date so many times and then got his throat. It wasn't.
Wilson claimed he did it because he suspected the boys had a relationship with his daughter, yet there was no evidence proving the same. He also added that he thought his girlfriend wanted him to do it.
She was making me feel like it was something that I had to do. But I forgot saying.
After days of an emotional trial and compelling evidence, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. Mark Wilson was guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. With the trial concluded, attention turned to the sentencing phase. The judge adopted the jury's recommendation, sentencing Wilson to the death penalty for the murders of Tatiana and Robert Baker. Wilson's crimes were shocking and bizarre, yet they are just one of the many that keep happening. In an earlier case in 2014, the Hudson community in Florida was thrust into a nightmare when a quadruple murder rocked its peaceful streets. At the heart of this tragedy was Megan Brown, a young woman who had recently ended her rocky relationship with Adam Matos. Little did she know, this decision would lead to a sequence of events that would end in unimaginable horror. In July of 2014, Megan Brown and her parents relocated to Hudson, Florida, with the intention of being closer to their relatives in the state. Adam Matos, Megan's ex-boyfriend, moved with them from Pennsylvania. Despite their relationship being described as tumultuous by family members, Megan and Matos tried to maintain their connection for the sake of their son, who was diagnosed with autism. Arguments between Megan and Matos about their differing approaches to parenting their son were not uncommon, as reported by family members. While the rest of the family stayed close, Matos often isolated himself in a bedroom, spending his time playing video games. He briefly worked as a dishwasher at a local restaurant in Hudson, but was fired due to his frequent absences from work.
looked clean cut. We were looking for a dishwasher, so we threw him in a dish pit.
Meanwhile, Megan Brown began a new romantic relationship with Nick Leonard, whom she met while working as a bartender at Fisherman's Shack, a bar in Hudson. Tanya Carlson, Megan's co-worker, observed Matos' behavior and described him as aggressive and rude. According to her, Matos would frequently call Megan incessantly and send unpleasant text messages, criticizing her parenting and labeling her as a bad mother. In court, Matos calmly went over the day he killed his ex-girlfriend, her parents, and her new boyfriend. He said he loved Megan Brown, the mother of their son, and was disgusted by what he did.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it.
He said that Nicholas Leonard, Megan's new boyfriend, attacked him, which set off the violence. According to Matos, Leonard choked him and placed a gun to his chest in the Hudson home, making him fear for his life. He added that Megan's father entered the room with a gun. During the altercation, Matos admitted stabbing Leonard with a knife and then shooting Brown because he believed Brown was going to kill him. Then he said that he shot close to Megan's hiding place and the bullet ricocheted and struck her in the eye. He claimed to have lost it when he realized he had killed Megan. He then took a hammer and went back to kill the wounded Leonard and used the same hammer to ambush Margaret Brown when she came back home from work.
I hit her over the head a few times.
Matos said paranoia had taken over.
I realize now that she probably wasn't trying to kill me. I was just out of it and so paranoid and in shock.
In the days that followed, Matos stayed at home and tried to clean up the bloody scene with his 4-year-old son. Eventually, police found the two in a hotel in Tampa.
Confused. Was sad.
The families of Matos' victims spoke out in court about how the killings continued to impact their lives, particularly Matos' son, Tristan, who despite being autistic, vividly remembered the day Matos killed his mother.
There's not a single day that goes by that your son does not think about his family that he lost at the hands of a murderer. He loves his mother, he loves his grandparents, and he loves us. He does not love you. You stole his whole world. You ruined his whole life, and we are here to pick up the pieces.
Tristan was adopted by other family members. Before she read his sentence, the judge had a few words for Matos.
This was the most selfish, self-centered, evil thing that I've ever heard. That you took the stand and you said that you did all of this for your son is ridiculous. Your son was in the house when this occurred. He was either in the room or within 65, 70 feet of when you shot his mother, shot his grandfather, and then waited 5 hours, by your own admission, to walk downstairs and beat his grandmother to death. In those 5 hours, you must have sat in that house with your son. He was there. It's 6 o'clock in the evening. He's not asleep. He's not locked in his room. You're sitting there with your son, with his dead mother, his dead grandfather, and a man who gave his life for those people. You sat there with him and went downstairs and finished off his grandmother. And you did that for your own selfish reasons.
And now, Adam Matos learns his fate.
And based on the decision of the jury, I sentence you in count 1 and count 4 to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In counts 2 and 3, I sentence you to life without the possibility of parole. However, that's with a firearm, discharge, include charging death, which means hopefully that no matter what happens with the legislature, no matter what we decide on life or death in your case, you will never, ever be released from prison.
Domestic violence has become too common, as we see in this next case. This is Thomas Knuff. He is in court on multiple charges, including theft and murder in Ohio.
You know, when you show emotion and you say you're sorry, they say you're lying. When you don't, you're a psychopath.
Thomas was on parole when he murdered John and his girlfriend Regina following an argument.
Police say he stabbed a couple in their home and left the bodies behind.
Care police say was stabbed multiple times by Knuff. We learned today in a press conference with Parma Heights Police that Knuff was released after serving more than 15 years in prison for a string of break-ins throughout Northeast Ohio. Well, during his time in prison, he became pen pals with Capo Bianco. The two wrote to each other for more than 10 years, police say. It was Capo Bianco and Mann who even picked Knuff up from prison when he was released in April.
Thomas was arrested following investigations, and now he is in court.
Offer already to him and John's family that, I'm sorry for how things turned out. And, when you show emotion and you say you're sorry, they say you're lying. When you don't, you're a psychopath. I understand that, they need somebody to hate, but, this isn't over. And, I'm going to pursue every avenue to get the truth.
The victims' families gave their victim impact statements.
Not versed in all of your life's choices or actions, I've seen two glaring failures you've made. You chose, as I previously mentioned, not to peacefully exist in civilized society.
My heart is broken. I don't know if it will ever repair. I miss her every day. She will not get to see her sons get married. She will not get to be called grandma.
The prosecutor also addressed Thomas.
That have common, ordinary jobs and start their own businesses. They were broken into because he was desperate for money. So there are also other victims here. Classic Hair Studio is a victim. Spa and nail salon. That woman closed her business out of fear that that would happen again.
And then the judge
noted that the one consistent theme was that Mr. Knuff was sorry for how things turned out, but I never heard him say that he was sorry for his own actions. Not once did I recall hearing.
It was now time for the sentencing.
Pursuant to Division D1 of this section, which is 2929.03, there was, of course, a jury recommendation that the sentence of death be imposed. The court finds by proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the aggravating circumstances the offender was found guilty of committing outweigh the mitigating factors. Therefore, on count 2, the sentence of death will be imposed upon the offender.
I have to live with this for the rest of my life, so wherever I'm at, doesn't matter, to me, my life's.
Thomas is awaiting death in prison. Thomas's crimes are truly shocking, but how do they compare to a robbery gone wrong? This is Joseph McAlpin.
Strikingly similar response of Joseph McAlpin, who is facing multiple charges.
He is in court facing multiple charges, including murder and cruelty to animals in Ohio.
Murder is power calculation and design. Well, that's part of it. But what's the difference between power calculation and design to set up a date for a man to be put to death?
On April 14, 2017, which coincided with Good Friday, tragedy struck at Mr. Carr's dealership in Cleveland, Ohio. The owners, Mike Kuznick and Trina Tamala, were preparing to close up shop and head home to their children, with Easter baskets nestled in the backseat of their car. Little did they know, this routine evening would turn into a nightmare. Just before they could leave, a robber entered their car dealership and killed them and their dog, Axel. The criminal, Joseph McAlpin.
McAlpin thought he was smarter than everyone else, and he thought he could, plan this crime and get away with it, and he just didn't realize how easy it is to catch individuals who commit this type of crime.
The testimony of Andrew Keeners, one of the co-defendants in Joseph McAlpin's trial, shed light on the events leading up to the robbery and murders. McAlpin, along with his brother Jerome Diggs, recruited Keener to assist them in robbing Mr. Carr's in exchange for drugs and money. Their plan was to steal titles and cars from the dealership and then sell them for cash.
Admitting he's seen in this surveillance footage running to the car lot, then driving one car away. He says he had no idea people were killed.
I need to make sure that everybody that lost their families get justice.
Keeners is seen in this surveillance footage running to the car lot and driving one car away. He said he had no idea people had been killed in the car shop.
I need to make sure that everybody that lost their families get justice for them.
Keeners did not hesitate in outing McAlpin.
If you was man enough to go in there and rob and kill that family, why you not man enough to tell everybody in this courtroom? I don't see how people believe in you.
Surveillance footage and phone records presented during the trial provided a chilling account of the crime. McAlpin was captured on camera entering the dealership around 5:30 p.m. and leaving about an hour later, loading stolen items into Keener's Mercedes. Keener and McAlpin then drove off, leaving behind a gruesome scene. The couple's 19-year-old son, growing concerned when his parents failed to return home, discovered their bodies at the dealership later that evening. Both Mike and Trina had been shot at close range, along with Axel the dog. Additionally, 2 cars were missing from the dealership, and computers containing surveillance footage had been stolen. McAlpin's DNA was found at the crime scene and inside the stolen BMW, further implicating him in the murders. His online activity leading up to and following the crime, including searches for firearms and news accounts of the robbery, provided damning evidence against him. In court, Joseph decided to represent himself, with appointed attorneys serving as standby counsel. He had the chance to cross-examine witnesses whose voices were changed to protect their identity.
What do you know if you're lying? What do you know if you're telling the truth? How can we distinguish that to understand that?
Right now, I'm telling the truth.
How do we know that?
I don't got no reason to lie.
You didn't have no reason to lie in the beginning.
I did. I was scared.
Scared of what?
You
Why was you scared of me?
and your family.
Why was you scared of my family?
Because if you just did those innocent people like that, you will do somebody else like that.
He even called on his family members to testify.
He seen a lot of things he shouldn't have seen as a child.
Eventually, he rested his case.
I'm not standing up here to say, hey, you found me guilty. I didn't mean to do it, please. I still stand firm on my...
Before he was sentenced, Councilman Mike Paletic had something to say to him.
Day one, this was never about vengeance. It's been about justice. I stood there on that Good Friday night as they carried out Mike and Trina and Axel in body bags. I was there. I saw the pictures from the corner. I saw what this individual did to them, the viciousness of the crime. He is a demonic killer, a demonic killer. It's one thing to rob somebody, but it's another thing to do what he did.
The prosecution made its case.
Your Honor, pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code, we believe that consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crime, not only to punish the offender, and that they would not be disproportionate to the seriousness of his conduct and to the danger he poses.
And now the sentencing.
Thursday of last week, the jury found that the aggravating circumstances outweighed the mitigating factors beyond reasonable doubt, and therefore found the verdict of death to be appropriate.
Despite being handed the death penalty, Joseph didn't give up his claims of innocence.
My name is Joseph McAlpin, and I was falsely convicted for the killings that happened in 2017, April 14th, in Cleveland, Ohio, of the Mr. Carr's 2 car lot killing. What you're about to see here is actual proof of my innocence, showing that the prosecution withheld evidence from my case that would show that I was away from the crime scene during the time the murders was being committed.
Despite his arguments in appeal regarding interference with his defense, the court upheld his conviction. Joseph McAlpin is still in prison, awaiting his death.